Okay, so let's just start off by moving. So inside that field, again, we don't want the field of gravity to be too much like a scientific mathematical concept. So it's just more organic, yeah? Like there's an organic quality to the forces of nature. They're not just mechanical and impersonal, yeah? So we want to become animists. So like very primitive man, before he produced the concept of a god, then every object would have had a spirit. There would have been a god inside every object. So this is very much what we're into. And just try and appreciate that everything we do, any sort of internal or spiritual work, hinges on the mind being able to become quiet. So we mustn't mistake mind for the contents of mind. Thoughts and feelings are the contents of mind. We want to quieten those down so that we can experience pure mind, or what they call the void, or emptiness. And the main block to everything is the split between the upper and the lower body. So without that split, we wouldn't have an ego. Yeah, we would just be present. We wouldn't be mediating the world through our own opinions, through an ego. So our problem is that we are an S-shaped spine that's sitting, that's perched upon the pedestal of two legs. So the ground is, for us, is something that's down there, yeah? So we just really want to feel that we're just really getting into it. We're not on it. We're not perched upon it. We're not sitting atop the legs. We're going through. So for that, the lower back just needs a hell of a lot of work because it has to soften. For most people, their lower back is effectively fused. So their bum, even if they pull their self forwards, their bum is permanently out a little bit. So the only person I know who's soft here is Sayala, yeah? So she's a nun most of the time. So she's done a hell of a lot of meditation. So that thing of just sitting with a quiet mind just helps soften and spread this area so that your tail, your sacrum, can extend down the legs rather than sit on top of them. And then your legs really feel like they're part of your body. They feel no different from the arms. Yeah. So this is what we have to try and get to. But the best way to approach it is from both sides, if you like. So, you know, practicing the movement, the Tai Chi, and just trying to get this area soft and reaching down, but also meditation. Yeah, so quietening down inside so that this area can just naturally soften, and then you'll naturally just be reaching down. Yeah, so it wasn't long into my Tai Chi. I think we were doing the long form, you know, where John introduced meditation, seated meditation, yeah, and just said, this is important, yeah. And just feeling the feet on the ground, and just the thing we were working on last time, just trying to get out of thinking in terms of full and empty, being active and passive. The passive phase is the full phase. You know, think of when you kick, you've got your passive weight in one foot, and your other foot, the empty foot, is the active one. It's the one that's kicking, yeah? And so I want part of my mind with the weight, but that's like the passive mind. It's like the stupid mind, yeah? And I want a really active part of my mind with the empty foot. So even though I'm sinking here, and this is where I am, this is where my spirit is, yeah? So just feeling those two minds, one that's just sort of congealing into fullness, and the other one that's expanding into this really active, spirited emptiness. And just being able to keep those two minds going, just this, you know, yin and the yang, so just this balance, as one changes, the other one changes. So that's the difficulty, because, you know, the way the ego works is basically to be against everything, really. Yeah, so it sees everything in terms of me and that. So the subject and the object. Yeah. And so we want to take a point of view. Yeah. Whereas in Taoism, the point of view is always changing. Yeah. There's a beautiful Gerard Manley Hopkins poem where he's talking about him and his friends. They go and see this waterfall. And, you know, when there's a waterfall, you get a lot of mist from the water that's just coming into the air, the little water droplets. and they all see a rainbow in the mist, which you often do. And he says, but we all saw the same rainbow, but it was actually a different rainbow. So it's at a different place, because that rainbow depends upon where you are. Yeah. So they're all seeing the same phenomenon, but it was appearing to them differently. Yeah. So what we're trying to get back to is just the actual phenomenon itself. So the rolling yin yang symbol. The process, we're trying to get back to natural process, not natural things, but the change which is the natural process. So just feel it here. It's like you're like the waterfall that's crashing down into this foot, and it's just producing a mist that's rising. Yeah, so your passive sinking is producing a spirited, delicate rising all around it. And we just have to be aware of that, otherwise we're stupid. Yeah? Otherwise we're just clumping through the world like oafs, buffoons. So something's rising. But it's not because I'm doing this. I'm not making an effort. I'm making an effort to sink. Yeah? And that is producing the rising energy. And just keep your mind with the feet. Yeah? So the feet are very much alive. They're like hobbits' feet, they're big and sort of hairy. So I sink here and something comes up. And I really want the sinking, as though I could reach down and just lift something off the ground. Like I'm standing at the shoreline of the sea and I could just reach down and lift up a handful of water. And just, I find those directions really useful. So sink the shoulders, loosen the hips, and concentrate the spirit. Yeah. And concentrate the spirit is basically mind in Danqian. But concentrating the spirit is just a nice way to conceive of it. So if you want to relax and just really let go and become the proverbial cloud of gnats, then you need an anchor. And that's the concentrated spirit. Yeah? So the cloud of gnats is not contained by a container, it's held together by a force. Yeah? And that force is your concentrated spirit. And just feel the 2 feet just changing from full to empty. Yeah? And how do they feel? What's the emotion that each foot is experiencing? Yeah? So as I sink into it, it becomes spread, but it also becomes a bit sort of heavy, whereas the other one almost threatens to leave the ground. So I have to just really make sure it stays purchased. Yeah, so in meditation, they they watch the breathing, you know, rather than being with the thoughts in the head. They just try and watch something that's completely alien to this, which is the breathing. And so whereas, you know, in Tai Chi, we tend to watch just that gentle passage from full to empty. It's just like being on a swing. Yeah. And you just have to sort of just make sure that your practice, your personal practice, is not just the repetition of routines. It's a real investigation. It's a real spirited inquiry. Okay, so let's bring it to riding horse. So just feel the sacrum. The spine is stacked on top of the sacrum. Yeah. And this sense of almost like a heart shape here. Yeah, so it's like your legs have come up and have settled down on top of the sacrum. So the hip bones are gripping the top of the sacrum, so the bottom of the sacrum can just dangle down. So we just want to feel that connect between the hip bones and the sacrum. So that's really sort of strong, but it's very much not coming up like this. It's very much coming up and then down. Exactly the same way as the arms. So we've got another heart here. So the arm, these spinal erectors, they come up over the shoulder and down the arm. So now just focusing on these muscles here and just feeling, it's easy just to tense them and get a sense of erecting, of coming up with the chest and the heart. And you can really feel how if you're being aggressive, it would all be here. Yeah. But we also want the other direction. So we want the feeling of, you know, I can tense them to get this to happen, but I can relax them to get them to reach down my legs. And that's the difficult bit. So that's the bit we need to work on most. So just feeling that they slip down through the glute and down the hamstring and just into the feet. And just letting go of, it's difficult, it's like just letting go of your own opinions, really. It's like your own certainties, yeah? Because those certainties freeze you to energy. They just block energy out, yeah? So when you're standing here, it feels like the ground is pumping. But of course, the ground isn't pumping. It's me that's pumping, yeah? And the reason it's pumping is because I've let go of that bit that is determined to make the world the way I want it, yeah? So I've let go of that, ooh, and suddenly everything's moving. Everything's threatening to sort of destabilize me. So the spirit won't go against that, whereas the ego completely will. The spirit will keep you together, but also maintain enough fluidity to be able to flow with energy, for energy to be able to pass through you. Yeah, so the feet always feel like this, yeah? It's never this. If it was this, you wouldn't really feel it, yeah? It's more, ooh, there's this going on all the time. And you just want that to come up into this area. Yeah? And if you imagine it too vividly, then you'll create it. It won't quite be authentic. And in order to create it as something that's artificial, you basically have to use the ego, which means blocking off here. So it's a really fine line between getting it right and getting it terribly wrong. And the best way is just to relax and let it happen. You can't force it. And then when it does happen, when spirit rises, it's like a gift. You can't make it happen. I mean, maybe if someone came running at you with a sword, then it would, then you would make it happen. Yeah. But just when you're in meditation or you're doing Tai Chi, it's only occasionally that the real spirit will come up and fill the room. So you just got to be eternally grateful for those events of spirit. But here it's like the ground is rumbling, yeah, and you're feeling it. So we just want to get into the habit of listening, but not with our ears, with our whole body. So when you hear a sound like the gardener down there strimming the tiny bit of vegetation, then just feeling that vibration coming into the whole body rather than just registering it with the ears and getting irritated. Yeah. And so everything is potentially giving you like a massage. Yeah? Okay. So just feeling that pump between the legs. So when we're moving like this, we just have to be really careful. It doesn't just become a mechanical operation through which the mind can think to itself about all sorts of things that are completely unrelated. Yeah. So basically, this movement from side to side comes from this pump with the ground. Yeah. And this really just has to just open up across the lower back. Okay. And now let's just try a bit of the breathing. So there's nothing quite so cleansing and relaxing as just focusing on the breathing, especially with a movement, with an associated. So even if you're sitting in meditation and you're ostensibly not moving, you can still imagine that your spine is extending with the in-breath and then deflating a little bit with the out-breath. And just again, just feeling the It's not really an emotion, but just registering how it feels. So when you deflate a little, it's a little bit depressing. And when you hear it's that things are looking up, yeah. And you basically can't have one without the other. You can't just breathe in all the time. Every in-breath has to be followed by an out-breath. And you just have to be willing not to get attached to whichever phase you're on, so that the next one can just flow naturally out of it. And this is what we tend to lack now. You know, we just want good things to go on forever and bad things never to happen. You know, but they're just going to flow in and out of each other if you're living a real life. So here, just really inflating, completely inflating, and then if you can, completely deflating. And again, just trying to feel this deflation phase as having an activity in it. It's not just letting go and letting the air come out. You're actively pulling in and squeezing. And just letting the whole spine get involved, just feeling any parts of the spine that are reluctant to separate from the vertebra beneath or above it. Yeah, so in meditation, you watch the breathing and you become the breathing. So you just become this breathing. It's almost like you just become one big lung, and there's no thinking head inside it. It's just possessed by the pure pleasure of breathing. Yeah, so when you breathe in here, can you breathe in so deeply that the heart just extends up out of the chest just a little? Yeah, so when you go into psychotherapy, generally the process of it is through talking to bring the patient to a realization that they are holding on to bad habits that at one time were good habits. So they adopted habits when they were little to deal with difficulties, and those difficulties are no longer there anymore. So the best course would be to give up those habits, yeah. And that's basically all we're doing. And the bad habit is ego, is thinking to yourself and seeing yourself as separate from the world, rather than just bleeding with it and into it all the time. So that's the one we're just trying to give up. And it's very difficult. So you need a part of your life that is almost sacred, in which ego just isn't permitted. Yeah, it has to have that reverent silence. Yeah, and this would be what practices or your meditation. Or, you know, a lot of people I know are Buddhists, and they have like a little shrine in their home, and they'll just meditate in front of it. So it's like a ritualistic quality that just demands, you know, you just, when you find yourself thinking to yourself, you just know you've sullied the experience. It's like you've shat on the shrine. So just reaching, vaporizing. It's like your boundary is just becoming non-existent. So you're almost vaporizing. Imagine the sweat on your body just becoming water vapor as it evaporates off you. Yeah, so is that sweat part of you? And when does it stop being part of you? Is it when it's come out of the pore and starts spreading over the skin, or is it when it's evaporated and has left your body? Or is it still you as it's vaporizing into the room? Yeah. And it's the same with the breath, yeah. So here I'm sucking the room into my body, and then here I'm squeezing it out. But when does that air stop being me? So we're hollow, we're porous, we're an empty vessel. Okay, so now let's just bring it back to riding horse. And again, just feel the legs rising up in order to come down. Yeah. Okay, and now let's just trying to keep these relatively still, the hips, and just turning the waist by tightening either side alternately. So just get it going to start with. And then we just want to allow those activated muscles to change our mood. So we want a listening that is always really ready to become transformed by what it hears. It's not just listening in order to make an opinion, which is what, you know, generally here. I mean, so many of my students here, I tell them something and they have to think about it and give me their opinion. as if I'm remotely interested. So it's not that you've got to, this, you know, as a student, you have to allow the images and the words of the teacher to change you. Because it's only through that that you'll get an experience of energy, really. Especially when the teaching is remote, like it is with Zoom. So so it is, it's like I'm drawing into that muscle at the back. It's become like a storehouse. And I just find myself just getting a little bit tougher and meaner and almost impatient. Yeah. I'd just like to get to the state where someone starts giving me an opinion, I just punch them on the nose. So pulling. Yeah, so it's the yielding that pulls into the muscle. And the attack just comes out because when this muscle tightens, the other one has to release. Otherwise, I'm not using my body correctly. So we just have to make sure that we're always using the body in a single weighted way. So one side and then the other. So one, I pull and as I pull here, I just really want to feel the bottom of the snake reaching down with its tail into my foot. Yeah. And then the top part, you can think of the top part of the snake coming out of the opposite hand. Yeah, so to someone watching, you're just sort of wafting from side to side like a ponce, yeah. But inside, you're really, like the tiger that's about to tear someone's throat out. So, and I just want to make sure the turn happens because something happens in one of these muscles, not because I've pushed my hips around with my legs. So it's coming from spirit. Yeah. So the spirit really does sort of reside in those two muscles. Okay. Let's just bring it back. Yeah, so John used to say there's basically, two types of spirit, male spirit, female spirit. So male spirit would be like aggressive fighting spirit. And so for that, you just won't find a better example than like the bodybuilders or like a boxer like Mike Tyson. Yeah. And for me, the female spirit is best exemplified by gay men because they have a femininity that is always on display. Yeah. So women don't need to be like that because they're naturally feminine. Yeah. Whereas men need to they just need to make a point. So Tyson has this sort of anger that's just lodged here and is ready to explode out. Whereas gay guys are just a lot more sort of delicate and subtle. But again, it's coming from these two muscles, but it's very much coming from the two muscles alternating and sliding past them. Yeah, it's like they just have like a mini orgasm every time these two muscles slip against each other. So just living a world of pure sensuality. And for me, it's best exemplified by that female soprano, the Brazilian guy I sent you the clip of. I mean, such a beautiful voice, but just as gay as they come, and just, the way he just looks at the world, there's nothing in between him and the experience. Yeah. He's completely without opinion. I mean, when he goes back into himself and he starts camping it up, then obviously that's the world of opinion. But when he's singing, when he's just got his eyes on that conductor and some things are just coming out of him, then it's just a miracle. Yeah. Okay, so let's just try a few where we just go down and then just throwing the head back to come back up. So just going down, you can go down as far as you like, let yourself almost collapse into it a little bit, and then just throw the head up from those muscles in the lower back, and just let your legs just stretch up into it. It's going very much like you're just whipping some energy up from the ground through those thick muscles in the back, but using your spirit. So it's your spirit that's rising because you've tightened those muscles that pulls the body up. So it should feel almost effortless, yeah? So when the spirit is working well, then in a sense, you're not really using the body. It's right like when sportsmen get into the zone and they just feel themselves outperforming themselves. So the spirits just come up. It's the miracle of spirit, and their body everything is just working so well. Yeah, so we just want to just become soft and empty enough so that spirit can express itself inside us. We're just a vehicle for spirit. We're not a vehicle for ego. And sometimes the spirit will come out in a way that's just difficult and dangerous and potentially damaging, but so be it. So you're like a wilted flower that's been put in water, and suddenly the water just starts being sucked up, and the flower just looks up to the sky again and praises God. Yeah, think about a plant and trees. Is all they want is enough energy to just look up. Something beautiful that Roberta once said to me in an email. he said, it really saddens me to know that there are people in the world that have never experienced the absolute joy in praising God. Yeah, so just this thing of just your heart is just lifting. Yeah, so this is what, so John, from being the Tai Chi master through Dr. Chi to becoming the spirit master through Dr. Panizzi, just finally rejected all of that to become the heart master. With a heart that is just ever open and ever suffering and ever bleeding, yeah, ever breaking. A heart that's always breaking open, yeah. And that's what we protect ourselves from, so we never grow up. This is why, the infantile narcissistic bourgeoisie, yeah. So, and then it's just like the rain comes down again. And then here something evaporates in. So it's just the process of precipitation, yeah? It's just the sun evaporating the water, making it rise. It then forms a cloud, and that cloud precipitates, yeah? And just really trying to relax and just feel it in the lower back. So the lower back should start, the muscles should just start aching a little bit. And that's just a sign that you're getting into them, and you just have to be careful you don't overdo it. Because if they start hurting, it will sort of limit your spirit in the next few days. So let's just bring it back. Yeah, so this sense that when you're facing the world, your part of you is very much in these muscles, yeah? And then you can face the world with an open heart, with a brave, courageous heart, The word courage just comes from core, which means heart, yeah? So I saw a poet once said, courage is basically two words, core, meaning heart, and rage. So there's always this sense that you're raring, you're raging. There's something inside you that's just bursting to come out. And it doesn't have to come out aggressively. It can just come out really delightfully. But you won't really experience it, yeah? But the world will experience it. So it's a pure gift.